Hey, I'm Wilmer Valderrama.
Freddy Rodriguez.
And very proud to bring to you part 2 of our incredible conversation with our brother Gabriel Luna here.
El más chingón.
El más
chingón, güey. Pero tranquilo, güey. O sea que...
Part 2.
Part 2.
Kicking things off with...
How did that process happen? How did you even...
That was, what was wild about that is around that time, I had just so happened to stumble upon a podcast of Robert Patrick talking about the process of becoming the T-1000. And then shortly after I listened to this podcast, I'd say like a week later is when I got the call that they wanted to bring me in for this. And I went in to see Larray Mayfield was our casting director on that. And so began almost the exact same mirrored process that Jim put Robert through when he was the T-1000. First thing was the first casting thing. The callback was with Tim. I remember seeing Mackenzie come out of the room. Mackenzie Davis had just did her, who eventually was cast as Grace in the film. Call back, leave there. Next step was to go meet with Tim at his office. And this all happened to Robert. This is exactly as it happened. Because then Robert went to go see Jim Cameron. And they met together. Right. Then they had a stunt assessment with the stunt team, which is what he went through and it's what I went through with Phil Silvera, who was the stunt
And the stunt assessment is pretty much like, can you...
Yeah, how do you feel? How do you move and everything else? You know, then they bring me in, they teach me some choreo of a certain fight. And I have to do the fight with Freddy Bosiegas, who is our fight coordinator, who is now the president of Stunts Unlimited. And I love him so much. He's one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
And so Robert, of course, went through the same thing. I went, the next step was I was waiting and then meet with Skydance, go meet with David Ellison, who was producing the film. And so once again, parallel perfectly with what Robert was experiencing at the time. He went to meet Paramount at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just all kinds of crazy kind of interwoven moments. But then I remember after that being in a little bit of a holding pattern. I was buying a house at the time, so that kind of kept the house I'm in now, kind of kept my mind off the process because it was just a lot of waiting. But it felt like it was all going along the framework that I had heard Robert talk about in this podcast. So I was like, okay,
so where am I in the process?
Where am I? It feels like I'm at the end of it now.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, Tim calls me. Or the team calls and they're like, they want to screen test you. And I was like, okay, man, whatever they want. So I went to Blur Studios. I met with Tim Miller and he brings me aside and he's like, Gabe, he'll hold me by the shoulders like, you are my guy. But Jim wants me to screen test you. And I was like, yeah, man, whatever Jim wants. And he's like, because I'm telling you, I told him, he's the guy. I don't need to do this. But he told me that he once built a whole... This is Tim talking about Jim Cameron. He said that Jim once built a whole rainforest for a screen test, which is apparently what he did for Sam Worthington when he was testing for Avatar. Just built a whole, full-on set of Pandora for him to do his screen test. So he's like, so Tim, just test the kid. And so we go in there. There's one scene where I'm talking to these two border guards after I just ripped through, 20, 30 border guards, basically border patrol guys. I infiltrate as a border patrol looking for the target and then just rip through this entire detention facility, which at the time was really, really timely, considering how people were being treated and people being detained and held for, interminable amounts of time. And so I did that scene for the screen test and then I was done. I'd say about a week later, once again, about to go, I get the text from my wife, which is the grocery list. Once again, about to go to Trader Joe's. And I'm like, what? Trader Joe's is getting a lot of...
Absolutely. Yeah. This episode has been brought to you by Trader Joe's.
And so, once again, no one around, just get the call that, Tim called me. The opportunity was incredible.
Yeah.
And was the role written Latino or were you just the best dude for it?
Well, I think the idea was, I don't know where what the I think yes. I think, well, first of all, the machine is has a kind of like this polyalloy, basically a kind of a T1000 exoskeleton, liquid skin, and then a endoskeleton, which makes it more durable, much like the T800. So it's both, and it can split and become essentially the shell, which is the T1000, and an endo, and kind of coordinate and triangulate on the target. So there was that aspect. So it could be anything. It could obviously transform into anything.
Yeah.
But the target, played by Natalia Reyes, was from Mexico City. So if you're going to send a Terminator to Mexico City, you make them look like the local populace. Right. And so that was part of it, and just kept that general look throughout the thing, and transformed into a couple of different people while I was along the way hunting them. Another instance where everyone was, making their jokes, and it's the T1000, where it's this, that. And then
I was waiting when that was gonna happen.
Yeah, and it did without fail. But once again, when it comes out, people forget that aspect of it.
Yeah,
because if it's performed, with diligence and care and focus, and because I trained so hard for that, and I gained 22 pounds of muscle. I read the Tao Jeet Kune Do over and over again, back to back, because my whole thing was, which is of course Bruce Lee's book about efficiency of movement, no wasted movement, and how anything that isn't fighting should be shed, because anything beyond what is fighting is what he calls organized despair, any kind of like flourishes or wushu or anything like that. It's like, no, if it doesn't get the job done towards the end of
it needs to be out of the
neutralizing or eliminating your opponent, then it doesn't factor in. If it's not fighting, it isn't fighting.
And did you read that and subscribe to that? Like, did you feel that the character embodied that philosophy, or
well, I think the character as a machine would be the most efficient.
Yeah.
And would take the shortest line from A to B towards the target.
I see.
Every movement, every step, every strike would be towards the target, even if he was engaged with another target. So that was kind of my philosophy there. And then, of course, I put on 22 pounds of muscle, training my butt off, knowing that at one point I was going to be sitting in front of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Of course.
And I didn't want him to look at me and think that he could squish me like a bug.
Hey, you puny.
You puny. And so I remember the first time I met him, he came in for a hair and makeup test. Bill Corso, our makeup artist, the legendary Academy Award-winning special effects makeup artist, Bill Corso, was painting his like battle damage onto Arnold, doing like a test. And while he was doing that, Arnold was meeting with Susana, one of our makeup artists from Spain, because we shot the first, I think, 2 months in Madrid. Susana was there just gushing over the fact that her father was Arnold's makeup artist on Conan.
Oh.
And so Arnold had been there in Almeria decades ago making Conan. And here he was now working with the daughter of his makeup artist in that film. So he's been just employing generations of Spanish makeup artists. Dude. And it was such a beautiful story. I didn't want to, but they brought me in to meet him. But I was like, no, there's a beautiful thing happening there. Just let them. So I just sat on the other end of the hair and makeup trailer. And finally, they had finished their conversation, and Susanna left. And Bill's like, Arnold, here's Gabriel. And he turns to me, and I see like half his face all ripped up.
Come on.
And I should probably turn the camera this way. Half his face all ripped up. Yeah. And he goes, and I stood up, and he was like, wow. Look at you, you're ripped. Look at this guy. And I was just
like, yes.
Holy moly. I was like, that's it. That's all the encourage I needed.
The step of approval. Like step of approval.
And then we went on to become very close. We would train, 3-4 times a week together at Flex Gym in Budapest. Shout out to Adam Seslasko, who owns the gym. And it was so cool, man.
What a memory.
That gym in Budapest is legendary. I mean, everybody's been there. The Rock, Henry Cavill. Henry was there. He was shooting The Witcher. He was actually there while we were there. Will Smith and Jamie Foxx, and they're all on the walls there. And of course, Arnold now prominently placed. There's like a T800 statue of him in the thing. Albert, who was Arnold's he was kind of a patron of Arnold's when he first moved to the States. Albert used to run bodybuilding competitions in Europe. He was based out of Germany. And Albert actually donated these old machines, these old weight machines that are from the 60s. And they're all chrome, they polish them up. And now it's basically like a living museum at Flex Gym in Budapest, where you can train on these machines that Arnold was training on in the 60s.
Oh, so you can train
use them.
That's
There's pictures of Arnold on the machines from that era.
That's so
Albert
badass.
donated this to
I didn't even
Adam.
think that would be an actual exhibition for anyone who's like a fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, it's like, oh, this is an exhibition that you can also interact with, that iconically was established by someone that iconically was a physique.
like a pilgrimage to
it's
this
so
iconic
crazy.
gym.
Isn't that cool though? It's just
so
a cool
cool.
idea
It's
that they
so
did
cool.
that. But now there's on that wall is a huge picture of myself, and then a beautiful, huge picture of me and
So
Arnold
sick.
together next to
course
the
there is.
T800 statue.
Yes.
And so he and I just became, we're part of this very small fraternity of people who were the Terminators. But beyond that, he has become this father figure to me, and somebody who if some cool stuff is happening in my life, where you're kind of an older brother, I'd say that he's kind of the father figure. And like I was at WrestleMania a couple months ago, and I was just like, Arnold loves. He used to be really good friends with superstar Billy Graham. So Arnold loves wrestling. So I was like, he only FaceTime, so I FaceTime him. I was like, check this out. He's like, wow, how many people are there? 63,000. He's like, whoa, it's a lot of people. All right, I love you. Have fun. But it's just whatever.
So
If there's some
cool,
cool
bro.
stuff
Come
going on,
on,
I just call him, and just to hear him and his excitement and.
Such a genuine man too, right? Like,
Absolutely.
he's just so
Absolutely.
still ever wonders about this whole process, about making movies, about this. Like, it just seems like he's still passionate about that. And I've seen your friendship with him kind of played out. And I've always been like, man, like, I don't know what it'd be like to be like, Arnold, like, I'm doing biceps now. Like, like I'm also trying to do a squat. What would be the most effective squat?
Well, I'll tell you how he does he does biceps. He likes the preacher curl. He likes curls of all sorts, curls for the girls.
Yes,
Girls and the girls.
But Arnold's thing is slow on the negative.
that's right.
And then bang, explosive on the rep, and then slow on the negative. Bang. That's how he does. And the way he just trains, dude, it's like a machine. I mean, form is perfect. Everything is perfect. The timing of it is almost like a metronome.
Right.
And it's amazing.
Enjoy
to watch.
every rep.
Absolutely. He feels it. He feels every single rep. And I remember training with him at Flex and just being kind of in awe of it. There's this photo of us on one of our first training sessions together, and I'm doing triceps on the cables, and he's there with his counting off the reps, and he's got the German 3 that we all learned in Inglourious Bastards, that this is the German 3. If you do this, you get killed. If you do, and it's still to this day, as I'm speaking about it, just seems like someone else's life, but it is, and it's
Well,
you have one I lead.
I will say, man, you've been able to not just live up to your dream, but now you're in a position to, continue to tell stories on a level that, it again becomes the dream of the next Gabriel Luna. Who's going to be the next Gabriel Luna? Is looking at you and be like, The Last of Us, right? Like that character. And by the way, you're like such a scene stealer, bro. Like you don't want to do a scene with him in The Last of Us because you were just like, he's so interesting. Why don't we do more of this guy?
And you and Pedro are so believable as brothers.
You guys are perfect together.
Yeah.
And your vibe, your chemistry, the way what is that? What was that experience like? The Last of Us was such a, people always, and before 10 years ago, people were really cynical about like, a video game, a comic book.
Yeah.
But it really is like, if you have the right tools to tell the story from the character perspective first, it doesn't matter how extraordinary or how big the world is around you, because the story, it really is about the individuals living it, not like, look at how big this is, look at the stunts, or look at the zombies.
Look at the monsters,
Exactly. So they really got that one masterfully right.
Did Carolyn Strauss produce that one?
She did. You worked with Carolyn?
Yeah.
Well, that's HBO.
Yeah.
The lineage of that. Yeah. Sopranos, Game of Thrones, all the things that she's worked on.
Yeah.
Mark Mylod, who Entourage, who was a director, became an EP of Entourage, won an Emmy for Succession, all the episodes he did there. of course, worked
Mark
on
Mylod, by the way, little connection there too. He directed the pilot to Minority Report, which was
Right.
like
wow.
we did
Did
this
really-
one season on
yeah.
that show at Fox, and he came and directed the pilot, and he had just been back from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
because he directed some of the biggest episodes.
What a
of Game of
beautiful
Thrones.
person.
Beautiful person.
Beautiful, incredibly talented guy. One
So
of my favorite
kind.
directors I've ever worked with.
Very kind.
Can do scale, can do sci-fi, can do action, can do those, but once again knows that, you know, it's really about that person, and them standing in front of each other and expressing themselves. And that is so that's another kind of, that's the thing with HBO, you know, this is the third time I did the day player role that I did for HBO when I was in Austin. Temple Grandin.
Oh, right.
I did True Detective, and then The Last of Us, and they always keep it in the family, you know, because I'm sitting there with Jeffrey Wright, who was in Westworld, and Rutina, who was in True Blood, and Pedro, who's in Game of Thrones, and Bella, Game of Thrones. You know, it's just like family, and that's why I love working with HBO.
Yeah,
and
they're a great network.
Carolyn's amazing. And so when all that came together, it was a really hot kind of property that everyone knew of it. It was coming up, and everybody's speculating who's going to get cast. And then when Pedro was cast as Joel, it did kind of flash in my mind. I was like, I think I could play that guy's brother. I know that there's a brother character. And then I didn't think about it again. And then when I was still on Twitter, I remember seeing, I mentioned this kid a lot. I actually met them at a London Comic-Con one time. There was a young girl who just threw the idea out there, and it got a lot of attention on the internet. The possibility that I could play it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Just seeing somebody out in the masses, just say it. And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Once again, didn't really register beyond that. And then a month and a half, almost 2 months later, my team calls and says, Craig Mazin and Carolyn Strauss want to meet with you about playing Tommy Miller in The Last of Us. And I was like, they're like, are you familiar with the game? I was like, no, but I can get familiar. And so I went on my PlayStation, I got the game, and I started playing it, and I realized that they were from Austin, Texas.
Oh,
like the characters themselves are from Austin, Texas.
Bro, come on.
Yeah. And I was like, I can do that.
Yeah.
I know what that is. And sure enough, it all worked out. They wanted me to play Pedro's brother.
For that, did you have to test for that, or like?
Well, yeah. So what they did was they called me. Craig and Carolyn wanted to meet with me, and we met. Me, Carolyn, and Neil Druckmann, the creator of the game, one of the directors. I should say Craig is our showrunner, and we just met. We talked for about, I think, 45 minutes. Found out that Neil and I have the same birthday. We're both born on December 5th. We share a birthday with Little Richard and Walt Disney.
That's
and Fritz Lang.
That's great.
I go to Disneyland quite often for my birthday because they'll always give me
It's the
two
best.
buttons, one for Walt and whatever 170th, whatever birthday it is, and then
That's
mine
crazy.
as I get closer and closer to 117. And then they said, you know, we love you. We think you'd be great for this. If you wouldn't mind, maybe put down a scene for us. And they sent me a scene from the second game where Tommy is talking to Ellie about going to Seattle. And I didn't know what that was about yet because I hadn't played that part of the game yet. But in between my meeting, or in between them calling saying I had the meeting to the time I took the meeting, I had about 3 days. So I played some of the game and realized all these aspects of it that I had mentioned before. They're from Austin, the dynamic between the brothers, everything seemed very kind of in my wheelhouse. The fact that the character was a veteran, and you know, I've played a lot of characters that have this kind of history and this you know, just experience on the gun. So he's a sniper, which is I did. I had worked with Jack Nevels, who trains Army snipers. He was our military advisor for Terminator, and so already had a lot of this kind of knowledge and experience. And so I told them all this in the meeting. They were eating it up. They loved it. And they was like, you know what, you're kind of perfect. We just wanted you to kind of throw this scene together. And I'm like, sure. So the next day I sent this scene. My wife was my reader, she's really funny. She's like, you know what, I should do a sketch about how I'm the reader to the stars and how my tapes book.
Yeah.
She's
Reader to the stars.
It's this whole
That's
skit about
right.
how this person is the go-to reader in the town. And so we did the scene and sent it in, and they called me, I think, within like 3 or 4 hours.
Isn't that funny how I really think they know they're gonna give you the part, and
Yeah.
it's like this song and dance that just traditionally they gotta do.
It's just
see it.
you know, everybody
You know
in the
what I mean?
meeting,
Like-
everybody in the meeting knows, and then I think it's, you know, they just kind of shoot it up the ladder or wherever. And then,
It's almost like they said they did it. We got the tape. Like, you know, you wonder if they even watch it. They're like, all right, cool,
Right.
cool.
I mean, the fact that it came in hours later, I was like, okay, I guess.
Yeah,
never
that's what I mean.
see it,
Like,
saw it.
it's
but
like
the,
you were obviously the person that whole time.
and so that was that, and I was given all the scripts, I think just shortly before I shipped out, and I played the game for the next 2 months in prep. I just kind of played the game, started seeing the casting announcements come through, and everybody was, I of course got cast, and everybody was questioning why, and then and then we do the show. We go out. This is post pandemic, so this was still. It was a kind of a masked situation.
Mhm.
We were coming out of the pandemic, doing a show about a pandemic, wondering if people were going to be fatigued about this subject matter.
Oh,
But
that's
not only was
interesting
it
that was your thought, yeah.
not only was it not that,
Right.
it actually was more so kind of this entry point for people. They
Mhm.
knew, they had the experience, they had this collective knowledge of what that living through that is like, and the fear that anyone around you could infect you, you know. And I remember going to Calgary, Alberta. I was in quarantine for 2 weeks, FaceTime with Pedro, trying to get our relationship, built. And it was really beautiful. Just
So easy for you guys.
really easy, man. He grew up in San Antonio for the first like 5 years of his life. San Antonio is 86 miles down the road from Austin.
Yeah.
And so we kind of worked out some dialect stuff. He heard kind of my voice and what I was going to do with the thing, and tried to match some of that. And we matched some physicality and just have these discussions over FaceTime. And then the day I got out of quarantine, I went to get to do my hair, makeup test, and my costume fitting. And then my driver, she asked me, "So what do you want to do with your first, what do you want to do? You're out of quarantine." I was like, "Take me to the Hart House." And the Hart House is the ancestral home of Bret Hart and his family, his father, Stu Hart.
The wrestler?
The wrestler, yeah. I was a huge, growing up, I was a huge, and I am still now.
Yeah.
As I mentioned
the Hart
before.
Foundation. And,
The Hart
from
Foundation,
back in
exactly.
the day.
So Bret Hart is, so I went and did my pilgrimage to the Hart House, and I
Right.
lurked around the gates and took photos outside, and there's this beautiful plaque that says Hart House. And with two Greco-Roman wrestlers wrestling, and then there I could see the basement from the street, the world famous dungeon where Stu Hart, his father, trained generations of wrestlers, including his entire family. Bret, his brother Owen, and his brother-in-law's Davey Boy and Jim Neidhart, who his tag team partner.
Right.
And so I go home. I come back the next day. Our COVID doctor, a fellow named Mike, was like, "What'd you do with your first day of freedom?" And I said, "I went to the Hart House." He's like, "Oh, you're a wrestling fan?" I was like, "Yeah, I like wrestling. I mean, I love Bret Hart." I mean, I told him the story that when I was a kid, after my mom got divorced with my brother Timothy's dad, our first outing together as our new family unit, my mom, myself, and my little brother, was to go see WWE at the Frank Irwin Center in Austin, Texas in 1989 at Saturday night's main event. We were going there to see The Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
And we left eternal Bret Hart fans because my brother he bestowed the pink visor shades onto my brother, which is his claim to fame.
Yes,
for
of
the
course.
first.
At this point, you're immortal.
He was 5.
Please tell me he still has them.
Yeah, he still has them somewhere.
That's great.
And he's like, he just held that over my head for so long.
Yeah.
As the little brother, he's like, "Look what I got, look what I got." Every time I try to hold him, he's like, "You can't, those are mine. You can't touch them."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so flash forward to Calgary, Alberta. I'm shooting The Last of Us. We're like around the end of the first episode or something. And then the same COVID doctor, well, he had told me earlier, he's like, "You know what? I know Bret Hart's appearance agent. Maybe it can link you guys up." I was like, "Oh, that'd be amazing."
Crazy.
Didn't think about it. Just go to work. One of the last days of the first episode, my assistant comes up. She's like, I got Mike COVID on the line. I was like, oh no. I thought I popped dirty on one of the COVID tests. I was like, oh shoot. What's going on, man? We're ready to hear him tell me you need to walk off the set and we need to whatever. Quarantine you again for 2 weeks. But it wasn't that. It was, hey man, how would you like to meet Bret Hart? And I was like, I would love to.
Come on, bro.
He's like, well, I gave him your phone number. He's going to call you tomorrow.
What?
I was like, well, wait, hold on. No.
He's gonna call you.
Yeah. I was like, wait. I'm working. We're on nights tonight. I'm not getting off until 6 a.m. When is he going to call? He's like, I don't know, man. He's just going to call you. And I was like, okay. So I worked all night, wrapped at 6, drove the hour from High River back to Calgary, went to bed, woke up at like 9. Another like situation with Robert where I didn't sleep very much, but I knew something, I had to answer the phone. And I answer it, or he calls me like 9:12, so I'm glad I'm up. He's like, hey Gabe, this is Bret. Hear you're a big fan, and my son Blade's a fan of yours, and maybe we can meet up and go have a bite to eat. And I was like, yeah, that'd be wonderful. I was like, what do you want to do? He's like, well, tomorrow we can go to Red's Diner. It's kind of close to your house. And I was like, sounds good. And then I get off the phone and my wife's laughing. You're like, you look like a little kid.
No, dude, I'm a little kid listening to that story.
And then
the whole thing, by the way, the universe, right? Like that you're like, it's 9 a.m. You're talking to like your childhood hero, and then like you're making, oh, well, let's go get a bite. You're like, what's my
crazy,
life, bro?
dude, crazy. Because then the next day, I drive over to that Red's Diner. I get us a corner booth, and I'm waiting for him. I'm 30 minutes early because he's not gonna wait for me. But then 12 o'clock comes around. And he's not there. I'm like, oh, okay. So I go outside and I look outside on the patio. He's not there. I was like, oh, shoot. And then he texts me and he says, I'm here. I was like, wait, where are you? I call him up. I'm sorry, where are you? He said, oh, I'm on the patio. And I was like, I'm looking at the patio and there's no one there. I was like, okay, 1 second. I go up to the hostess. So I was like, is there another Red's Diner? She's like, oh, yeah, there's one in Kensington. Oh. And I was like, oh, God. So I get in the car. I drive over to Kensington. It's kind of a more kind of fancier. I mean, as fancy as kind of Calgary gets. And then I'm looking at
how far away is it?
Everything in Calgary is only 15 minutes.
Okay,
away,
okay. So you weren't that far away.
So I go over there, and I'm just looking at the patio from outside. And I don't see Bret Hart there. And also, this kind of part of town doesn't strike me as the other place I just left felt very much like a Bret Hart spot. It's like old diner, red brick building, and then I get to this place and it's kind of new and fancy. I was like, this doesn't feel right. So I started driving back to the other place. Maybe I just missed him. But then I look at my phone, he texts me and I call him furiously. I'm sir, I'm so sorry. I'm on my way. I would never keep you waiting. He's like, oh, it's all right. Just take your time. And then I look on the text thread, and he had sent me the physical address where I needed to go, and I just had overlooked it. It was another Red's Diner in East Calgary.
No.
Where he lives. But once again, everything's 12, 15 minutes away. So I drive to East Calgary, and there he is sitting outside. And we'd appreciate this as Latinos and people who love wrestling. We will probably all love Rey Mysterio. And apparently, so does Bret Hart. In fact, Rey is probably his favorite wrestler, I think he says. And he's wearing a Rey Mysterio shirt from a company called Roots of Fight that my buddy Jesse Katz owns. And I'm looking at Bret Hart there and his silver shock of hair sitting right in front of me.
Come on, dude.
And we proceed to have a 5-hour conversation. He tells me every single story straight from the horse's mouth. He tells me about the Montreal screw job against Shawn Michaels where Vince screwed him out of the belt. He tells me WrestleMania 13 with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he's using, when he described the Montreal screw job, he's using salt shakers, and sugar packets, pepper things to show me where everybody was. He's like, so I'm sitting here, Sean's in the corner crying, my brother and Davey and Jim are sitting here, this salt shaker, this is Vince coming in with Sergeant Slaughter. And he's just like doing the whole, basically the floor map of what happened when he punched Vince McMahon out and knocked him out with an uppercut and laid him out on the floor. So he tells me this whole story. He's like, Davey boy always stole my towel, so I didn't have a towel. So I'm naked as a jaybird as I walk out, and I tell Vince, you better be out of here by the time I get my clothes on. And he's like, I only got my pants and one shoe on, and I got up and I uppercutted him and I knocked him out. He told me the whole story. And then he tells me the story about Stone Cold Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13, where Stone Cold is bleeding. It's a very famous, probably the most famous WrestleMania match. Yeah. In fact, it's the first match to ever be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. at this year's WrestleMania where I was in attendance. And I went to have dinner with Bret and his wife Stephanie with my friend Michael, who blew my buddy Michael's mind. So we're sitting there, Cosmopolitan, having dinner, and he was just telling me the whole thing about the induction of the match and everything else. And I was telling Michael about how Bret had told me about that match, and he used a sweet and low that he folds into fourths to show me the size of the blade, and then how he taped it with his wrist tape, and he left a tiny little that corner of the blade exposed, because traditionally that's how you would get color and cut yourself and gig, and you usually do it to yourself, but Stone Cold had never done it before, so Bret volunteered to do it for him, but with the stipulation that if the blade comes out, it has to happen. You can't go back from that point, even though at the time there was a strict no blood rule that Vince McMahon had put in place. And not only did they do it, they did it right in front of Vince. He was never none the wiser. Everybody thought that Stone Cold he had really potatoed Stone Cold and was bleeding. Right. But he had kept the blade. The tape is all the way around with a tiny bit of it exposed, and usually you tape it to your wrist with wrist tape. And Bret told me that he had stuck it in his gums. So for the entirety of the match, he had a blade stuck in his gums. Wow. And then, of course, cuts Stone Cold, takes him into the ring, puts Stone Cold in the sharpshooter. Stone Cold refuses to give up. And that was by design, because he had no real submission moves, and they had given him this finish where it had to be a submission. And so Bret puts him in the sharpshooter, and he's like, the only way this works is if the people in the 300s can see how much pain you're in. And that's why you have to get cut. And he was right, because it's legendary. Stone Cold is bleeding from his face. He's pushing, he's refusing to give up, and then he just passes out, and they ring the bell. And basically, Stone Cold is forever in Bret Hart's debt and loves him dearly. And the love goes two ways. Bret loves Stone Cold as well. We all love Stone Cold from Texas, because we're all, he's from Victoria and I'm from Austin, and Stone Cold lived in Austin for a long time. And he just, at that point, made Stone Cold's career. Right. And Steve has said this many times himself. And so it's just to have this guy who I idolize.
Incredible, dude.
Tell me these stories. And then have that match inducted into the Hall of Fame this year at WrestleMania, and be able to sit with Bret and his wife the night after it happens.
Was Stone Cold resistant at all to any of sort of like where Bret thought?
Yeah.
He was
at some point when the blade came out. Yeah. He says that Steve was like, "Don't do it. Don't do it."
Oh, really?
And then Bret was like, "It's too late."
It was already, comes out, you gotta do it.
So but then ever since then it's been lauded as probably the WrestleMania match.
Totally.
But anyway, after I met with Bret that first time when we were at Red's Diner, he gives me a Hitman hat from Roots of Fight. This podcast is brought to you by Trader Joe's and Roots of Fight. And,
WWE.
And he gives me the hat, and he gives me his book. And in the book, he signed the book, and his signature is there. And it's so funny, because I remember, it's as if that signature is emblazoned in my mind, because when he gives the shades out, he signs them, he pre-signs them. So I had seen his signature throughout my childhood on that pair of shades that he had given my brother. And now I'm looking at it again 30 years later, 30-something years later, on the front jacket of his book. And I was like, wow, that's so crazy. I remember this. Yeah. Only difference was now it has 4 hearts, where previously it only had 3, because each heart is representative of one of his children. And at the time, he gave those to my brother. And when we were at that show, he only had 3 kids.
Oh, wow.
And then since then, he's had his daughter Beans, who's obviously an adult now. And I just remember seeing that. I took all that home, and I go back to my house, and once again, my wife's like, "You look like a goddamn kid." So I have the hat on, I have the book.
But it's so hard not to, man, because I grew up with wrestling too. The Undertaker was my favorite, you know. Yeah. But as I was growing up, it was still very much vividly. And then all of a sudden, I ended up doing that 70s show. Yeah. And that 70s show decides to do a wrestling episode in partnership with WWF at the time.
Right. That's
WWF, yeah. WWF.
Mm-hmm. And they especially in the 70s. Well, in the 70s, it was the WWF back then.
So they signed. The coolest part about it was that they decided, okay, well, we're gonna do this special episode, and we were the #1 comedy, so it was like easy to get these cameos. Yeah. So they send all their up and comers. You know, they send the Hardy Boys.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Then they send Ken Shamrock and The
Amazing.
Rock.
Up and comers.
Bro, that was The Rock's first acting gig, by the way.
Oh, no way.
That was his
man.
first time
Really?
him being on like a TV
Wow.
show like
Oh
that.
wow.
Besides like wrestling or whatever. So he had to do this scene where he was kind of playing his dad.
He's playing Rocky Johnson.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
There is this actually hilarious picture. It's just me dressed as Fez in between Ken Shamrock and The Rock, and they're both doing this, like they're punching, and I'm like pretending to be scared. It's like such a great, epic picture for me.
That is incredible.
That's so cool.
But the point is, like, these guys roll up and they do like some little stunt stuff and a show or whatever. But you know, like we're looking at the Hardy Boys, and I'm looking at the Ken Shamrock during the year where he had just like left the UFC and joined,
Right.
And to me, because I was a huge, well, I still am. I'm one of the most massive UFC fans.
yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
Dana White was a dear friend. Is still very much a dear friend of mine. He would put me in the front row, you know, and then I became friends with all those guys, right? Like Rampage Jackson and
Oh,
George,
dude.
George
I mean, I'm a
St. Pierre
huge-
and, like,
I'm a
you know,
huge
and,
fan.
like,
Like
all
you and I both know Spiders.
Yes, and
Anderson
and
Silva.
Anderson Silva, who's the Michael Jordan of MMA, and so then when Ken Shamrock, who is one of my first
Yeah, dude.
heroes of
I mean,
mixed
he's one of the
martial
OGs,
arts,
man. Back
He was
when
one
the old logo, you know, like the original.
100%, and like he was the baddest man on the planet.
Yeah.
You know, he shows up to the set of 70 show, bro. My brain just like exploded, dude. I'm sitting and I'm looking at The Rock. He's like, you know, he's doing the eyebrow thing, and like at that time, everyone in the set is like, what is he doing with the eyebrow thing? It was like because he was like looking out, and he's like the most, you know, my son will be the most electrifying man in the, you know, and like he was doing the whole thing, you know, and
is
everyone's like,
wild,
why is he
dude.
doing?
Was he,
what
was
is
he a
he
heel?
looking
Was
at?
he a
in the
heel by
camera?
that time? Was he a heel? Because he
Yeah.
started off as like a good
Yeah.
guy. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't receive him as this good guy that they were
That's
trying
right.
to push. That he made his choice to turn into this kind of
Turn
guy.
heel,
That's how he
right?
became the most
Yeah.
electrifying man in sports entertainment.
But
that's
what a
so
trip,
crazy.
right?
That's so crazy because that is, it's our business is so funny because, you know, we're actors, but we want to be musicians, and the musicians want to be actors.
yeah.
We all want to be athletes, and the athletes want to be actors.
Yeah, that's right. That's
It's
right.
just and just to see how that all intersects. You know, right now you talk about the UFC, which I absolutely love as well, and the I was just at UFC 315 with some of my Terminal List castmates because we were there as guests of Valentina Shevchenko, which is the flyweight champion of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And she is going to be, she's just started acting. She was in a picture called Bruised with Halle Berry, and it was just announced that she is joining our cast. And we were there to see her, to support her, because we knew we were in this, trying to work out this deal so she can join the cast. So Valentina is going to be in the Terminal List with us, and we're going to share some scenes together.
Come on, how cool is
And
that?
so we got to go see her in her fight, and the whole time, it's just like, first of all, Valentina, please win this fight. Like, she was fighting Manon Fiorot, who's a great kickboxer.
Yeah.
Big gal. Big for flyweight. And number two, please don't hit her in the face. Like, please, no one hit
her on set.
You know, we need her on set. And not only did she barely got touched because she was so smart. I don't know if she even had this in the back of her mind. I'm sure she didn't. But she knows that she has this acting gig that she has potentially in a couple months. And of course, it'll be much sweeter if she's still the flyweight champion of the world. Mm-hmm. And of course, it'll be much easier if her face isn't completely beaten to bits. You know?
Right.
She proceeds to have just a masterful performance. So Manon, great big long limbs, great kickboxer, kept coming with this head kick, and without fail, every single attempt, Valentina pulls it. She pulls every single one. Just whips right in front of her face, and then she would counter every single time Manon threw this roundhouse to her head.
But that was the game plan. I mean, there was a known knowledge that kick was going to be coming all the time.
Oh yeah,
So they just
every
trained that
single
over and
time
over again.
she pulled it. Not one of them hit her, and I was like, "Wow, this is incredible." And then she won the fight. That night was incredible as well because Jose Aldo, who I believe he won that fight, and I was just talking to Anderson at the Ballerina premiere.
What did he think?
He thought Jose won as well. We all thought he did. So, but apparently Aldo took the gloves off, retired in the ring. Mm. Epic night. Who else? What else happened that night?
The UFC card, you mean?
JDM won the championship. That was pretty crazy. That was nice. So yeah, we had an amazing time, and then we went and had a pizza party with
As one does,
with
right?
Valentina.
As one does. Continue
Valentina let me hold her belt. We sat there, took photos together. We all had a pizza because she hadn't had pizza in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And we had a pizza party after you win,
Nice.
Defend your flyweight championship.
That's so
I just did a movie with, speaking of wrestlers wanting to act, I just did a movie with Charlotte Flair,
Oh yeah,
Ric Flair's daughter. Shout out to Ashley.
Mm.
She was lovely, wonderful, and such a great actress. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is your first movie?
yeah.
She was so prepared and so spot on, you know.
That's pretty awesome.
It's so-
yeah. We had
She's a legend number, and that she's earned her own legendary status.
Yeah, and I'm becoming more. I used to watch wrestling when I was a kid, and then sort of fell out of it. But I've recently been trying to get familiar with the times and people like her. We would walk around with her, and she was like the Beatles, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in the Dominican Republic, and people would be like, "Oh my God, it's Charlotte Flair,"
And that's the crazy thing about that old stuff. It's we all loved it as kids, of course,
Yeah.
but now it's such big business. It's
Yeah.
the WWE, the UFC are under the same umbrella, of course,
Right.
TKO,
Yeah.
and it's an entertainment conglomerate,
spectacles, right?
And it's just but their athleticism can never be shortchanged because it is a extremely physical.
I think they're the most fit, well-rounded athlete in the world. I mean, when people specialize for a sport, your body morphs into what it needs to be for that. Mixed martial arts, it's like everything in your body has to be a weapon, and it has to function, and it has to be thrown faster than the other person.
Yeah.
You think about it's just a well-rounded thing.
It is, and it's something. I'm a boxing purist in a lot of ways. But the thing about the UFC is, while some people will become masters of a certain discipline, you can never completely lean on that, and both hemispheres of your body have to be active, and they have to be able to respond. You have to be able to engage. You have to have them kind of act independently of each other in a lot of ways, which is an important skill set, of spherical kind of way of being.
Different IQ,
And that's what Bruce Lee. We talked about Bruce Lee
Right.
earlier in the Dao Jeet Kune Do. That's exactly what he was.
Right.
He was probably the world's first mixed
Totally.
martial artist, and that's what they always claim. That's what and rightfully so, because that was his approach, to not get tied in to any specific discipline, to not narrow your view of the world, because that's what martial arts was to him.
Right.
It was it was a expression, a manifestation of the world through your body in a very spherical way. And that's to be able to be ready in every direction, be able
Right.
to pivot in any direction. It's useful in all ways in your life. I think it's the mental aspect of that is applicable to us as actors. It's applicable to my work, the work that I have to do on the gun when I'm working on the Terminalist, for instance,
Right.
to the idea that both halves of your body are working independently of each other, but towards the same end. To be able to incorporate that,
right,
that
and
idea.
flow with ease, right?
So you're right. I think truly it is the most well-rounded, and
Did you do some
And it's
Navy SEAL
discipline.
training? Did you incorporate some of that?
we've done
Navy
a
SEAL
lot of that.
training?
We've done of course we had to.
And for terminalists, right?
for terminalists,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's your Navy
so, yeah,
SEAL.
that's what is that your next thing right now? Because
That's what I'm working on now,
right?
Next thing to come out will be a show that I shot also in Toronto called Devil in Disguise. It's about the John Wayne Gacy case, where I play Detective Raphael Tovar, who was the lead investigator on the John Wayne Gacy case in Chicago at the time,
Amazing.
in the 70s. And
What's the timeline?
who was a
of that?
Texas guy from Crystal City, Texas, who moved to Chicago because they were looking for bilingual people to be police officers. And then he finds himself as a lead investigator on this horrific case. That should be coming out on Peacock in the fall.
Amazing.
And then I'm currently in production on The Terminalist, which should come out sometime next year.
Amazing.
And that's,
Love the Terminalist.
yeah.
By the way, first season, NCIS were the bad guys. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's where the suspects, the ambiguous
Wow.
guys.
There were,
they-
yeah.
you
I mean,
know.
hey, all the way up to sec def, man. I mean, there's
That's
a lot
right.
of people
Nobody, hey,
involved.
hey, you're gonna trust anybody.
There were a
you
lot
know?
of people
That's
involved in
right.
that conspiracy.
That's right.
But,
But I love that show, Terminal List. It's
yeah.
like when I read that you were on it, I was like, oh, gosh,
Chris
this is gonna
does
have
a
so
great
much
job.
fun.
He's a great leader on that show. He's pulled together an awesome team.
Yeah.
Jared Shaw, Max Adams, Ray Mendoza worked on the first season and is also a TA. And he, of course, co-directed Warfare with Alex Garland. I worked with Ray Mendoza on True Detective many years ago. Our head military advisor there was a guy named Mark Simos.
Amazing.
I think Chick Daniels also worked on that, the fellow I mentioned before, who I worked with on Matador. But as far as like the SEAL teams and maneuvers, Mark Simos and Ray Mendoza, they were on they were in the teams at the same time. Their first platoon, they were deployed together. And I love Ray. I mean, and I'm so proud of him and what he was able to accomplish with the Warfare film, which is authenticity to a T. I mean, it's so devoid of any kind of morality play. It is completely devoid of any Hollywood bullshit.
Yeah.
Every single round is fired with a choice having been made, a decision being made. The action, there's no super heroics. There's just people trying to survive and trying to execute a mission and eventually trying to extract casualties from this scenario. And it's just a beautiful, I mean, beautiful is an interesting word to use, but it's a very impactful film, one that I'm still kind of thinking about as I sit here. But Ray is special, and he and Jared Shaw and Max Adams, all the people who are our military advisors, are amazing, and they definitely have equipped us with the requisite skill set to move and make it look real. And
you know what I noticed too?
but
man?
Ray was like, man, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But Jared was like, when we cast you, this is another thing. When I took the meeting about these guys to do this job, they're asking me a lot of serious questions about conflict, about fighting, how I feel about fighting. And my whole thing is, much like the characters I play, which I guess are just me and all the facets of me. It's to be both lion and lamb, to be powerful towards the for the benefit and for the protection of others, and the strength to be utilized in that way, but also to have the vulnerability and the softness inside to care and be compassionate and to find to strike the balance, And that's what I told him. I told him about the times I've been in fist fights, and but not in any kind of braggadocious way. Just the sheer fact of it. Every single one of those stories involved coming to someone else's aid, and because you can say what you want of me, and maybe even you might even be able to strike me, but once that force and that violence is turned to somebody who can't defend themselves, that's where the line is drawn. And I was making this clear to them in terms of my philosophy about fighting. And then they got to a point where at the end of the meeting, they're like, Gabe, you're the guy. You're perfect for this. And not just because of now what I know about you and how you, because one of the stories I told is about me coming into the aid of my buddy Beck Bennett. He used to be on Saturday Night Live, and we got into a bar fight at the White Horse in Austin, Texas.
In Austin. I was in East Austin. Right?
Yeah. That's a long story. I won't tell you here, but and then one of the guys pipes up, Max. He's like, we know you're the right guy, not just because of the stories you just told us, not maybe you because you helping your buddy Beck Bennett get out of this bar fight, but because you are both lion and lamb in the sense that the lamb was on display when you did a dance contest with my daughter in Chicago at a Comic-Con event where they came up to your table and you treated her with such respect and such love. And I'm so thankful for that, he told me. And
dance contest.
Yeah, she came up, she started dancing. She wanted to like have a dance off.
Okay.
And I remembered this. And I was like, oh, I do remember that. Yeah. He had a video. He's like, here's a video of it. And then she just came to set like 2 or 3 weeks ago. She made me a little bracelet and everything else. And she's like, I made you yours with the large beads. You're the only one that has the large beads because we're friends from a long time. I was like,
that's
yeah, you're right. But that is just these things. You never know. That's why you make full encounters and you treat people with respect. because down the line, down the road, you don't know how things shake out. And this is an instance where I'm now, this executive producer, former Army Ranger, is more inclined to trust me because he's seen these aspects that he needs for this character, the strength and the tenderness in a way.
Yeah.
And he's seen them on display in the flesh, kind of around the way.
And I said, you know, speaking of respect, and as we close the show, one of the things that I've noticed in every interview you've ever done and every encounter I have with you, you always have made a point of remembering every individual that is a part of telling the story. You give them their flowers, you know, their first and last name, and you're making sure that every time you bring up a job, you know, you make sure you mention every single person that touched your process, and you give them their flowers and you give them their credit. And for them, you know, sometimes it's just being remembered. You know,
man.
it's not about the credit. It's about just like being remembered that we all shared a very special storytelling moment. You know. And look, this is like those are the signs of other people behind us remembering and
Yes,
thinking
sir.
about us. You know, but Gary, I'm so stoked that you spent all this time with us here with us, and that you were able to share all those amazing stories, brought up so much memories of all the things that
man.
you know we've kind of coexisted with, and you know, we were just so thrilled to be able to tell you how much we love you and respect you, and can't wait to see you continue
love
to
you
win
guys,
and win
man.
and win. And
I love you guys, and that's just it's even at this moment to like kind of tread the stones that you guys laid, and that's the truth of it, you know. And I kind of made my bones a little later in my career, and you guys at such young ages were able to deliver and to make people respect us, to make people respect you, so that the door was open when I got there, and I intend to make sure the door's open for people behind me, and that's how we keep doing it, man.
well, you're making your culture incredibly proud.
Yeah.
Do you wanna take us out?
All right. Hey, this is Freddy Rodriguez.
And I'm Wilmer Valderrama, and thank you all for listening to this beautiful, and thank you, Gabriel Luna, for being here with us today.
Yeah, Gabriel.
To the next episode.
Next one.